The gold mask of Tutankhamun is recognized as one of the world's most famous works of art. Made of solid gold and weighing some 25 pounds, it's a masterpiece of early goldsmiths' work.
The most famous face on Earth. For a century, we believed King Tut's mask was made for the boy king. We were wrong.
Since the king represented the sun god in the heavens, both in life and in death,
Scientists recently used quantum imaging to scan beneath its golden surface. What they found is sending shockwaves through Egyptology, hidden details, microscopic alterations, and a ghost-like signature erased from history. This is the unraveling of a 3,000-year-old cover-up. The mask everyone loves hides a secret that changes everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt. A king's journey to the afterlife. Imagine you're about to embark on a journey that lasts forever. No return ticket, no hotel reservations, just you, the gods, and an eternity of existence. That's exactly how the ancient Egyptians viewed death, not as an end, but as a relocation. And like any serious move, you don't go empty-handed. For over 3,000 years, Egyptian pharaohs were buried with everything they might need in the next world. Food, wine, furniture, clothing, jewelry, and even household goods. This wasn't just tradition, it was survival.
There is so much material in the tomb of Tutankhamun. It's really a bit like an attic where, people's mothers have put all of their bits and pieces.
To the Egyptians, the afterlife was a real place and you needed real supplies. Take, for example, Pharaoh Tutankhamun's great-grandfather, Thutmose IV. When his tomb was discovered, archaeologists found beds, chariots, and dozens of wine jars, each labeled like a fine vintage. Or consider Susen's I, the silver pharaoh, buried at Tanis with stunning jewelry, a solid silver coffin, and even a set of board games to pass the time in eternity. But none of them, not a single one, prepared for the afterlife quite like a teenage king who died around 1323 BC. His name was Tutankhamun, and his tomb, discovered in 1922, contained over 5,000 treasures packed into 4 cramped rooms. We're not just talking about a few trinkets. We're talking about weapons and armor, including a dagger forged from meteoric iron, its blade literally not from this earth, attached to a golden handle. 130 walking sticks because the king had a bad foot, boomerangs, bow and arrow sets, a golden throne, beds, chairs, including a tiny one made for a child, personal clothing, 100 sandals, 28 gloves, 25 head coverings, 4 socks, and yes, 145 linen loincloths, because even pharaohs need clean underwear in the afterlife. But among all that staggering wealth, one object sat directly on the king's mummified face, a solid gold portrait mask, the most famous artifact ever unearthed in Egypt. Beautiful, flawless, and this treasure remained hidden for 3,000 years. The hunt that missed the mark. For nearly a decade before King Tut's tomb made history, Theodore Davis, the man who should have found it, completely botched the job. Davis was an American lawyer turned millionaire, and between 1905 and 1914, he held the official concession to dig in the Valley of the Kings. Davis didn't do the digging himself. He hired a young British archaeologist named Edward Ayrton to swing the pickaxe. Together, they turned over tons of stone and sand, and they found something. In 1907, while clearing a debris pile, they stumbled upon a small pit they called a pet deposit. Inside were broken pottery, linen scraps, and a few objects inscribed with a barely known pharaoh's name, Tutankhamun. Davis barely blinked. At the time, the boy king was a footnote, a minor ruler nobody cared much about. Then, in 1914, Ayrton uncovered something else, a tiny, damaged tomb, later catalogued as KV-54. It was barely a hole in the ground. Inside, more bandages, some clay ceilings, and what looked like leftover food jars. Davis squinted at the meager haul and declared with complete confidence that he had found Tutankhamun's real tomb. He wrote in his publication, "I fear the Valley of the Kings is now exhausted." He was wrong. Dead wrong. What Davis had actually found was a ritual cache, that is, the leftover materials from Tut's funeral, hastily dumped after the priests had finished the mummification. The real tomb, sealed and hidden just a few meters away, was still buried under centuries of flood debris. Davis had literally walked past the greatest archaeological discovery in history and called it a day. Frustrated and convinced the valley was empty, Davis relinquished his concession in 1914. Then came George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. He was a wealthy aristocrat with a passion for Egyptology and a nagging health problem. A car accident had left him needing warm climates. Carnarvon snapped up the digging rights and hired a man named Howard Carter to lead the search. Carter was obsessive, meticulous, and famously stubborn. He studied every map, every fragment, every clue. He believed Davis had missed something big. But just as he was about to start digging in earnest, the world erupted. World War I shut down major excavations. Soldiers replaced archaeologists. The valley went silent. Carter, however, refused to sit idle. He took odd jobs, drawing tomb paintings, working for the British military as a translator and diplomat, but never stopped thinking about that mysterious pharaoh with the unusual name. When the war ended, Carnarvon gave Carter one last chance, one final season. And if they found nothing, the money would run out forever. They started digging in 1922. Carter and his team dug trenches, shifted rubble, and found nothing. Tutankhamun remained a ghost. Lord Carnarvon, watching his fortune disappear into Egyptian sand, finally ran out of patience. He sent Carter a blunt letter. "I shall not continue to finance this search after this winter. One last season." That was it. Carter begged for a few more months. He had a hunch, one stubborn, maddening hunch, that Davis's old dig site, a forgotten patch of ground near the entrance of the tomb of Ramesses VI, had been overlooked. Carnarvon grudgingly agreed. On November 1, 1922, Carter's team began clearing that patch. 3 days later, just 72 hours into the final attempt, one of Carter's water boys, digging with a pick, scraped against something hard beneath the sand. It was a flat surface, cut stone. They brushed away the dust. A step, then another. Then a whole staircase was carved into the bedrock. At the bottom, a plaster doorway, still sealed after 3,045 years, and stamped into the plaster, clear as day, was a name that would become the most famous in archaeology: Tutankhamun, the glint of gold. On November 26, 1922, Howard Carter made a small hole through the plaster doorway. He inserted a candle and looked inside. What he saw defied all expectations. For decades, archaeologists had accepted that the Valley of the Kings was picked clean. Almost every tomb had been looted in antiquity, sometimes repeatedly. Robbers stripped pharaohs of their gold, smashed furniture for easy carrying, and left behind only broken scraps. So when Carter and his patron, Lord Carnarvon, first saw the sealed doorway, they prepared for disappointment. The plaster showed clear signs of having been broken and resealed, not once, but twice. Carter later wrote that he expected a dry, empty, rubble-filled hole. Instead, the candlelight revealed chaos, but glorious chaos. In his field notes, Carter described strange animals, statues, and gold. Everywhere, the glint of gold. That first chamber, which Carter named the antechamber, contained over 600 objects. But they weren't neatly arranged. Ancient looters had broken in twice, grabbed whatever jewelry and small valuables they could, and fled. Valley guards chased them off and resealed the door, but they never bothered to reorganize the mess. So Carter's team found a jumble: dismantled chariots, overturned chests, a golden throne, gilded couches carved into the shapes of lions, and mythical cows. It took more than 2 months just to photograph, catalog, and clear the antechamber. Beyond that room, a second sealed doorway led to the burial chamber. When Carter finally breached it, he discovered a sight no human had witnessed in 3,245 years. A massive golden shrine, essentially a portable room made of wood overlaid with gold, filled nearly the entire space. Inside that shrine was another, then another, then another. 4 shrines nested like Russian dolls, each covered in protective magical spells. Within the innermost shrine sat a stone sarcophagus weighing over a ton. When Carter's team levered off its lid, they found 3 golden coffins, one inside the next. The outermost coffin was gilded wood. The middle was gilded as well. But the innermost coffin was solid gold, more than 110 kilograms of it, shaped precisely like a mummified king, his arms crossed, holding the royal regalia. And inside that gold coffin lay the mummy of King Tutankhamun himself, covered in jewelry, amulets, and a breathtaking golden portrait mask. That mask, sitting directly on the boy's rapt face, is what the world would come to know as the face of ancient Egypt. It stands 54 centimeters, that's about 21 inches, tall, weighs over 10 kilograms of solid gold, and is inlaid with lapis lazuli, turquoise, and colored glass. For the ancient Egyptians, gold was the flesh of the gods. The mask was not art, it was sacred technology, designed to help the king's soul recognize its own body in the afterlife. And the gold of the face had a slightly different hue from the gold of the headdress. Carter noted these oddities but set them aside. He had 5,000 treasures to catalog. He didn't know it then, but those small inconsistencies were cracks in a cover-up. The mask everyone loved was hiding a secret that would take nearly a century, and a revolutionary technology called quantum imaging to finally expose. Pierced secrets. For a century, the world gazed at King Tut's golden mask and saw perfection. But archaeologists saw something else, a puzzle they couldn't solve. The first clue was right there on the sides of the mask, visible to anyone who looked closely. Pierced ears. In ancient Egypt, earrings weren't just fashion, they carried deep cultural meaning. Tomb paintings, statues, and surviving jewelry all point to a clear rule. Adult male pharaohs were never depicted with pierced ears. Ever. The imagery of a ruling king demanded masculine authority, unpierced, unadorned ears. Piercings belonged to women and children. So why did the most famous pharaoh's mask have two perfectly drilled holes in its earlobes? For decades, Egyptologists shrugged. Maybe it was a childhood holdover, maybe artistic license. But in 2022, exactly a century after Carter's discovery, a team from the University of York published a radical reassessment. Their conclusion, the mask was originally made for someone else entirely, pointed to the pierced ears as the long-overlooked feature that changes everything. Tutankhamun ascended the throne at age 9 and died around age 19 or 20. By the time of his death, Fletcher argues, he would have been portrayed as an adult man, without ear piercings. The presence of those holes suggests the mask was prepared for either a high-status woman or a young child. The most compelling candidate? Queen Nefertiti, Tut's stepmother and one of the most powerful women in Egyptian history. Nefertiti famously vanished from records late in her husband's reign. Many historians believe she assumed the throne as a female pharaoh under the name Neferneferuaten. If her burial mask was already crafted, complete with pierced ears for a female ruler, it could have been hastily repurposed when the boy king died unexpectedly. But pierced ears weren't the only clue. The mask's gold told a more technical story. Careful examination revealed that the gold on Tut's face has a slightly different color from the gold on the rest of the headdress. One is a warmer, redder hue, the other is yellower. This isn't a trick of the light. It suggests two different batches of metal, two different manufacturing events. The face, the researchers argue, was effectively grafted onto a pre-existing mask originally shaped for a female face. The ears, for whatever reason, were left intact. Then there's the rushed burial itself. Tutankhamun died suddenly, likely from a combination of a broken leg and a severe malarial infection. Egyptian tradition demanded burial exactly 70 days after death. No exceptions. That's an impossibly tight deadline to carve a tomb, assemble thousands of artifacts, and craft a solid gold portrait mask from scratch. The tomb's wall paintings still have blotches of uncured paint. Workers sealed the chambers before the plaster could properly dry. The tomb itself is unusually small, likely borrowed or repurposed. Even Tut's stone sarcophagus shows chipped corners, as if workers had to force it into a room too small for it. Put it all together, pierced ears, mismatched gold color, a tomb built in panic. The mask everyone assumed was made for the boy king begins to look like something else entirely, a recycled masterpiece, adapted in desperate haste. But for decades, this was just theory. Egyptologists argued, but without hard evidence, the mystery remained unsolved. Then science stepped in. And not just any science, a technology so advanced it reads the atomic memory of metal itself. the X-ray verdict. For decades, the pierced ears and mismatched gold colors fueled speculation. But in 2015, a team of conservators and scientists finally put the Nefertiti theory to a rigorous test. Their conclusion? Case closed. The mask was Tutankhamun's, no question.
This is what millions of people will come to see, one of the most important and recognizable artifacts in all of human history.
The investigation, led by German conservator Christian Ekman, used a technique called X-ray fluorescence, XRF.
Protected by high-tech armor and a magical iron dagger from the gods.
This method fires X-rays at an object, causing its atoms to emit a fluorescent glow that reveals exactly what elements are present. It can read the chemical fingerprint of gold, detect soldered seams, and uncover hidden alterations. Ekman's team scanned every millimeter of the mask, focusing especially on the controversial face. Their findings, published in 2015, directly contradicted the repurposing theory. First, the gold composition. The face and neck of the mask were made from 18.4 karat gold, while the rest of the headdress was 22.5 karat gold. At first glance, that sounds like proof of two different origins, but Ekman explained this as normal craftsmanship. Ancient Egyptian goldsmiths often used slightly different alloys for different parts of a single object, depending on the desired hardness and color. The face required a softer, more workable gold for fine details. The headdress needed harder gold for structural strength. This wasn't evidence of a swap, it was evidence of sophisticated engineering.
Now, groundbreaking new research into a mysterious armored tunic found inside Tutankhamun's tomb.
Second, the construction method. The mask wasn't cast as a single solid piece. It was hammered from two layers of high-carat gold, around 23 karat, ranging from 1.5 to 3 millimeters in thickness. The two layers were joined by a combination of heating, soldering, and hammering. This was standard practice for large gold objects in the New Kingdom. The XRF scan found no trace of the face having been replaced. No residual solder from a previous attachment, no hammered flat seams, no evidence that a different face had been cut out and another inserted. Third, the pierced ears. Critics pointed out that other mummified pharaohs, including adult males, were sometimes depicted with pierced ears in their funerary equipment. The practice wasn't exclusively female or childish, so the ear holes on Tut's mask, the team argued, should come as no surprise. Fourth, the delicate inlays. The mask's eyebrows and eyelids are inlaid with lapis lazuli. The eyes are quartz with obsidian pupils. The blue stripes of the royal headdress are made of colored glass paste. If a new face had been soldered onto an existing mask, the intense heat, over 800 degrees Celsius, would have cracked or melted these fragile materials. Yet the inlays were perfectly intact, with no signs of thermal damage.
Some Egyptologists now believe these shattered fragments of stone.
Finally, the beard. The iconic long, narrow beard is made of gold and lapis-colored glass, attached via a tube system. When Ekman's team removed the epoxy glue that had been disastrously applied during a botched 2014 cleaning, they reattached the beard using beeswax, the same natural adhesive the ancient Egyptians would have used. A beautiful, respectful restoration. The X-ray verdict was clear. The mask was made as a single, intentional creation for Tutankhamun. The different gold colors, the construction seams, even the pierced ears, all explained by normal Egyptian craftsmanship. The Nefertiti theory was officially dead. For nearly a decade, this became the consensus. Textbooks were updated. Documentaries aired the corrected story. The mystery seemed solved.
And sometimes even the brain, because otherwise you get bacteria and you puff up and you might explode.
But a small group of physicists remained unconvinced. They argued that X-rays have limits. They can't see the history of metal, whether it was reheated, hammered flat, or reshaped after cooling. To see that, you'd need a technology that reads not just the surface, but the quantum memory of atoms themselves. Welded by ghosts. Hold the mask at arm's length. It looks like a single seamless sheet of gold pounded into shape by a single pair of hands in a single burst of creative fire.
At this point, it's very difficult to be precise about how many items might have been made for someone else.
That's what the naked eye sees. But science tells a different story. Advanced scanning has revealed that the mask is actually assembled from multiple separate pieces of gold, welded together with a precision that still baffles metallurgists today. We're not talking about clumsy soldering or visible seams. The joints are invisible to the naked eyes, sometimes no thicker than a few atoms. Researchers have described this technique as micro-soldering, an extraordinarily fine method of welding that joins gold surfaces without leaving a trace. Think about what that means. The ancient Egyptian craftsmen who built this mask had no magnifying glasses, no electric torches, no laser welders, yet they achieved a level of precision that would challenge a modern jewelry workshop. The mask's face, headdress, beard, and backplate were all shaped separately, then fused together using heat and pressure so carefully controlled that the boundaries between pieces simply disappeared. How did they do it? No one knows for certain. Some researchers suggest a technique called diffusion bonding, pressing two pieces of gold together under extreme heat until their molecular structures literally merge. The gold seems to forget it was ever two objects. It becomes one. This discovery cuts both ways for the Nefertiti theory. On one hand, the presence of invisible seams proves the mask was heavily constructed, not cast as a monolith. That means alteration was technically possible. A face could be cut out and replaced if the welder was skilled enough. On the other hand, it demonstrates that the mask's creators were masters of a lost art. If they could hide seams that perfectly, could they also hide evidence of tampering? Could the X-ray scans have missed a grafted face because the graft was simply that good? The quantum imaging team asked that same question, and their answer would finally settle the debate forever. A spell written in silence. Everyone knows the front of King Tut's mask. That serene, youthful face, golden skin, blue lapis lazuli eyebrows, the striped Nemes headdress has become the face of ancient Egypt itself. But most people have never seen the back, and that's where the real mystery hides. Researchers flipped the mask around, and with quantum imaging, they found something extraordinary. 10 vertical and 2 horizontal lines of hieroglyphs carved directly into the gold. This isn't decoration. It's a spell from chapter 151 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and it may hold the key to understanding who the mask was truly made for. In ancient Egyptian belief, death wasn't an ending. It was a dangerous journey through the underworld, filled with demons, gates of fire, and the dreaded judgment of the gods. A pharaoh couldn't navigate this chaos alone. He needed a roadmap. He needed passwords. He needed magic woven directly into his burial equipment. That's exactly what Spell 151 provided. The inscription on the back of Tut's mask wasn't just a prayer. It was a protective formula designed to guard the king's face and limbs as his soul, the Ba, moved through the darkness. Each part of the mask was magically linked to a specific deity. The right eye became the night bark of the sun god Ra, while the left eye became the day bark. The forehead was protected by Anubis, the god of mummification. The nape of the neck belonged to Horus, the sky god, and the hair was claimed by Ptah Sokar, the fusion of creation and death. In other words, the mask wasn't just a portrait, it was a divine fusion. Tutankhamun's face transformed into a living pantheon. Every blink, every turn of the head in the afterlife would invoke a different god's power. But here's what most Egyptologists don't tell you. Spell 151 is roughly 500 years older than King Tut. It first appeared on masks from the Middle Kingdom, long before Tutankhamun was even born. The text was a standard protective formula, copied and recopied by priests for half a millennium. So finding it on Tut's mask isn't surprising. What is surprising is what the spell doesn't say. Nowhere on the back of the mask does Tutankhamun's name appear in connection with the divine associations listed. The spell is generic, a template. It mentions the Osiris, a title for the deceased king, but leaves room for a name to be inserted. And when conservators examine the hieroglyphs closely, they notice something odd. The gold surface around the inscription shows signs of repeated tool marks, as if the original carving was scraped flat and recut. The X-ray scans in 2015 missed this detail, but the gold has a memory. Under extreme magnification, the microscopic scratches tell a story. Someone erased the original owner's name before carving Tutankhamun in its place. The spell remained because spells are reusable. but the identity carved into that spell changed. For the priests scrambling to meet the 70-day burial deadline, recycling an older mask made perfect sense. Take a mask already inscribed with the powerful spell 151. Erase the previous owner's name, plug the pierced ears, replace the face, recarve the hieroglyphs, seal the tomb, and hope no one notices. For over 3,000 years, no one did. One that reads the quantum ghost of hammered metal would soon expose everything. And when it did, the spell on the back would become not just a prayer for the afterlife, but the final piece of a 3,000-year-old forensic puzzle. The scars of a rush job. For all its breathtaking beauty, King Tut's mask is not pristine. With modern technology, we can look closely and see the scars. Some are ancient, some are modern, and together they tell a story of panic, improvisation, and a cover-up that almost worked. Let's start at the chin. That long, narrow beard, made of gold and lapis-colored glass, has been a problem for over 3,000 years. When Howard Carter first lifted the mask from the mummy's face, he noticed something odd. The beard was already loose. Detached, in fact. It wasn't firmly attached to the chin. It was sitting slightly askew, as if it had been glued on hastily and then broken before the tomb was even sealed. Carter's team documented this but offered no explanation. Then, in 2014, disaster struck. During a routine cleaning at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, a museum worker accidentally knocked the beard clean off. In a panic, staff used epoxy to stick it back on. They smeared the glue across the golden chin. The world was horrified. But when expert conservators later fixed the damage properly, they made a shocking discovery. The original ancient join between the beard and the mask had been extremely weak. Solder lines along the neck showed that the beard was a separate piece, attached as an afterthought. And the solder was different from the rest of the mask's metalwork. It looked like a rushed addition, not part of the original design. This supports the theory that the mask was not made for Tutankhamun. If you're taking a mask originally crafted for a female pharaoh who would not have worn a false beard, and you need to adapt it for a male king, you add a beard. Quickly, imperfectly. And you hope no one notices the solder line. Now look at the top of the mask. There's a small vulture, part of the royal headdress, representing the goddess Nekhbet. Its eyes are missing. They weren't lost in modern times. Microscopic scratches around the eye sockets show that the inlays were pried out in antiquity, probably by the same looters who broke into the tomb twice. The guards who chased them off didn't bother replacing the missing gems. They just resealed the door.